Hi there, welcome back. And today I'm going to talk about our connection to nature, about essential oils from the perspective of how they work from their natural state, how they become essential oils, also how they interface with our brain chemistry, and really how truly magical they are, and how actually even though we seem to have become separated from nature, we're actually part of it. Now, if you find any of this content interesting, please subscribe, like, and share. And any comments will be invaluable to me. So, let's talk about essential oils. The first thing I wanted to tackle is the fact that we ourselves have become so disconnected from nature. A lot of the indigenous people have always lived their lives according to nature and in harmony with nature. There's a tremendous respect. I know when I was working with the shaman, everything we did, we left a blessing in return for taking something. And this is something we just don't have in our Western society. But it's true to say, right up until the Middle Ages, actually, we were very in tune with nature. We worked with the same cycles of nature. And really, it wasn't until the scientific revolution where philosophers like Descartes and Francis Bacon started to kind of separate us and see ourselves outside or higher than nature. And if you think they were the foundations of a lot of our medical systems and the way that we've taught about science, and the tendency is to compartmentalize everything into little boxes. So, that was even compounded by the Industrial Revolution, where if you think about it, the production of materials in vast quantities made us strip our natural resources more and more without putting anything back into it. So these are the areas where we've kind of somehow disconnected with nature. And I find it really interesting when you kind of actually think the only reason we are living is because of a process that happens between nature and us. The sun, the photons of the sun stimulate plants and they produce the oxygen we breathe. And in turn, we exhale the carbon dioxide they need to live. So there is a natural companionship and synergy there, but we take that for granted. We don't see that as something incredibly special. In fact, virtually everything that happens within nature is almost like a little quantum experiment going on all the time. The way a flower produces nectar, that's a quantum experiment, and it's done at room temperature. So let's think of essential oils as living energy. Now, there are almost 250,000 plant species in the world, and only 3,000 of them actually produces fragrance. Now, fragrance is produced by the plant as a secondary metabolic process. What that means is it's a secondary process that they use to protect themselves. And part of that is producing this beautiful scent. And that's there to attract pollinators like bees. It's also there to detract predators from eating them. So I think that's an incredibly insightful thing to know, that there is this unbelievable intelligence already working within them. Every plant actually has its own unique code, if you like, its own software, its own blueprint, and they are incredibly complex because each plant oil is made up of hundreds of compounds, and these compounds, interestingly enough, work very closely with our brain. In fact, certain compounds can bind directly with our neurotransmitters, and actually influence us in lots of different ways. It can either excite us, it can just alter our mood around, it can calm us down. The key transmitters, you have GABA, which is found in essential oils like lavender and chamomile, and that tends to kind of calm you down. You have serotonin and dopamine. Now, they're found in oils like ylang ylang. These actually are linked to stimulation, and they work with our reward and motivation centers. The third one is acetylcholine. That's quite a mouthful actually for me. I've been practicing. And that tends to work with our cognitive functions, and oils like peppermint can help with that, and rosemary. Now, I find that extraordinary, and it's actually been found that these compounds that exist in essential oils can actually target very, very specific neurotransmitters. So what that means is there's a natural intelligence that is navigating that journey through your body. Now, the way you take in essential oils, there are three key ways that you can absorb essential oil. The first way is through inhalation. The second is through absorption. This can either be done through massage or in the bath. And the third way is diffusion. That tends to happen, obviously when we use a diffuser in the room or burn a candle. Now, really, what I'm interested in is probably the first two, but more importantly, the first one. Now, in terms of absorption through massage and through bathing, what that does is it gets absorbed through the fatty tissue of the skin, and then it gets into the bloodstream. Now, this works on the body in a much more practical way to regulate our nervous system, to increase our vitality and our energy, and support our immune system. So that's working in a much more practical day-to-day level. Now, when we inhale essential oils, there are almost 400 receptors that are situated in our nose, and it's all part of the olfactory organ. Now, when we smell it, these receptors then send an electrical signal to the brain, and it specifically targets a system called the limbic system, and this is where our emotions and memories are stored. Hence, a lot of people, when you're working with essential oils like I do, or when people use essential oils regularly, they will say that a certain scent will evoke a memory, sometimes from their childhood, sometimes more recent memories, but they kind of also work to dissolve and placate sometimes very traumatic incidents that may have happened to you in your life. This means that there's quite a complex process that goes on in the selection of oils when you're creating a formulation. Fundamentally, you want to affect the body, the mind, and the spirit collectively. You're choosing from the perspective of what's going on physically. So those could be either the positives and the negatives of how you feel physically, how that affects you emotionally, how that affects you mentally, and then also the potential for change. I always think of that spiritual level as that potential for transforming something that has got stuck. And that's how I create, if you like, all of my blends at Quantum Alchemy. Now, one of the things that has recently emerged, it's been around for a while, but when you start looking at the oils from a vibrational level, you start to understand there are two ways that the oils work. There's one as a molecule, which is kind of links into the use of it in massage or in a bath oil. And then the secondary level is through a wave. Now, waves tend to happen when we go below an atom, and waves are part of a new type of quantum aromatherapy that is beginning to emerge now, and that actually interfaces directly with your brain. So we're using the compounds within essential oils to stimulate very, very specific responses in the brain. I've personally begun to incorporate this inhalation method with really specific breathing techniques and also meditative techniques, because I find with the targeted use of essential oils, you can evoke quite a change in the brain chemistry. So, we talked about compounds in essential oils binding to specific neurotransmitters. And that can be something quite amazing when somebody is overexcited, suffering from something like potentially ADHD, or when people are very depressive, helping to kind of calm them down. Or if you've got somebody who's really overexcited and fragmented, trying to bring their cognitive function into more alignment. Now, the human body has a frequency. It tends to resonate at about 57 megahertz. Now, what has been becoming apparent now, there are scientists who are beginning to record plants, and they're finding that each of these plants have their own frequencies, and they start around 75 megahertz going all the way up to about 350 megahertz. This is with the essential oils that have been recorded thus far. Now, a lot of the aromatherapy world kind of refutes that this can be done, but I kind of think to myself, radionics, for example, have been measuring the vibrations of plants and of minerals and of energy for a very long time. We record the aura with Kirlian photography. So I personally do believe in these vibrational frequencies of plant, and being someone who's very interested in numerology as well, when I start playing around with the equations of those oils, it's really interesting to see what they're doing vibrationally. But that's for another episode. I'll talk about that, but it is another passion of mine. Now, from this point, I think it's really important to understand that if you can interface with the brain chemistry, and specifically the area you want to influence is the pineal gland, which is kind of found right in the center of the head. I do a meditation, which I'm going to do a little bit later, which pinpoints exactly where it is. The pineal gland is the physical counterpart of the third eye chakra. And so by activating the pineal gland, it has two functions. It has a physical function in so much as it produces melatonin, which helps to relax and induce sleep. The secondary level is known as the gateway to consciousness, meaning it when it's activated, it expands our consciousness and therefore activates the third eye. So the third eye is kind of like our inner eye. So whereas we're constantly looking outwards at what's going on in the world, the third eye looks inwards, but it's actually more expansive because it's not limited by what I would call linear time. So when you start to think of this potential, the essential oils and breath and meditation, there is a possibility of then helping people transcend the limits of what they're bound into in their linear perception of the world. So their 3D focus on the world, which are very outward facing and related to our five senses. What we're doing is a cultivation of our sixth sense, which is intuition and the higher mind. So on that, I'm going to now do a little meditation just to show you how you can center yourself and start to make contact with the center in your head. And a little bit like the last meditation, we're going to start by first of all focusing on a point straight ahead of us. So just find a really comfortable position. You can sit on a chair if you don't want to sit on the floor. You don't have to be cross-legged. You can even lie down if you want to. So we're going to take a couple of those really deep, relaxing, sighing breaths, and you're going to breathe in. And as you sigh it out, use this sound. Ha is in Chinese medicine, ha relates to the heart. And actually the heart is a pivotal place that we need to reconnect with. We've all been far too much in our heads, and our heads tend to keep us in a loop of expectation, whereas our heart tends to temper what the mind thinks. So we're going to take another deep breath, still staring at that point ahead of us, breathing in and breathing out. When we do it the next time, we're going to breathe in. And as we breathe out, we close our eyes, but still being very, very present in our body, almost as though we're looking through the eyes, still through at that point. Breathing in through the nose. And as you exhale, just letting go of any tension in your shoulders and your neck. Breathing in again. One last exhale through the mouth with that sound, ha. Ha. So now from that point in between your eyebrows, just at the bridge of your nose, you're going to send a line to the back of the head. Then from the top of one ear to the other ear, you're going to extend another line. And you'll notice these two lines now intersect. Where they intersect, that's exactly where the pineal gland is. Now we're going to center ourselves even more. We're going to send a line down from the crown of the head all the way down the spine, all the way down through the base of the spine, and imagine that line going down through the floor, into the foundations, into the earth, and just sinking deep into the earth. And as it does that, just pulls all of your energy down out of your head. And then eventually you meet kind of at a central point of stillness within the earth. Now just expanding that central line outwards so it's encapsulates the width of your body now. So you've now got a little space in which to just expand into and feel comfortable all the time, connected to the earth, feeling its quiet energy pulsating through your feet and into your body. Just breathing for 2 seconds, breathing in so, breathing out hum, breathing in so, breathing in hum, breathing in so, breathing out hum. Now so hum means I am. So just being present with the idea of you being in your body 100%, not drifting away in any other direction, just you in the heartbeat of the earth. Taking a deep breath in, and as you exhale, just gently opening your eyes. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. See you next time. Bye for now.